Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this event, which will be the first of many others. We organized this together with our colleagues from INSABI, and it's for the 2022 procurement process. This is going to be an informative, technical, and open consultation space so that we can continue the dialogue that we started since many years ago with all of you. I kindly welcome you all. I'm Laura Flyreich. I'm the senior manager in the Medicines and Healing Materials project. On behalf of UNOPS and on the Institute of Health for Welfare in SABI, I kindly welcome you all, people from chambers, associations, and also representatives of the embassies who are here with us today. Due to social distancing and COVID restrictions, here we only have some representatives because we want everyone to stay safe. But we have many people with us in an online streaming session so that everyone can follow this event live. I especially thank the attendance of Canifarma, Anafam, Amelaf, Amif, Amid, Amepres, Inefam, Dilameg, Canacintra, and the company's coordination board. I also thank the Embassy of Chile, Denmark, South Korea, Germany, Russia, Hungary, Pakistan, Portugal, Singapore, Finland, and Italy for being here. Welcome, everyone. The objective of today's event is presenting information so that we can increase and strengthening the participation in all processes that we're carrying out. Today we have Jose Moscoso, who will be leading the session. Mr. Moscoso is the global leader of public procurement advising services in UNOPS, and we will also have some specialists, Jose Segovia and Federico Shubishi. We're going to start with our session. This is a very important event for UNOPS and for everyone. So I hope this is also very important for you who are attending today's session. Throughout the last year, we have been talking, getting to know each other, and fostering many different activities all together. So I want to thank you for your time, for your cooperation. We want to continue having these open spaces in which we can contribute to change the market and generate more welfare for those who need that the most in Mexico, which is our main objective and the objective of this project, which is bringing medicines and healing materials to those who need them the most. So go ahead. I'm going to give you some background. The government of Mexico, through INSABI, signed on July 31st, 2020, a bit more than a year ago, an agreement with UNOPS for the management of medicines and healing material consolidated procurement management for the 2021-2024 period. What are the objectives of the project? Under the framework of a fair public management, we aim to work together to manage a timely supply of medicines and healing materials with high quality products. Here, I'd like to highlight that we have been supported both in the national and international market in order to fulfill this objective. This is something we're working on every day. We also want to promote transparency and prevent corruption by adopting different practices according to a fair public management. This will allow us to grow the market and get the best quality at the best price. Here we have also had great participation in all of our processes, and we have been supported by the market, by the private sector, by chambers, by associations, and by international institutions and embassies. And lastly, we aim to generate savings in order to increase profit. We want all these efficiencies to go back to the country itself. What are the results that we have obtained? As you might know, and as we have said, we have been working together with Insabi, and until now, as part of the project, we have acquired 1,600 keys of medicines and healing materials. They correspond to 895 million pieces. We have delivered 95 million out of those 895. So we have spent more than 45 million pesos. And talking about the savings, more than 11 million pesos. We have generated more than 164 contracts and agreements with suppliers. We have 164 suppliers that work in 7 countries. Let's continue, please. Timely access to information. Throughout the process that we have jointly developed this last year, and through all the public informative sessions, through the communications that we have spread within SABI, through all the communications we have submitted through institutions, through all joint communication channels, we have tried to provide timely access to information for everyone to know what's happening. Last week, we sent a joint communication. It's on our website. In case you have not been able to read it, it's on our website. There you will be able to look at the results that I'm talking about right now. And you can see all details about the procurement process, important or relevant information that might be interesting for you all. So we were able to publish all this information in a timely manner according to the process that we were carrying out. As I was telling you, we have signed contracts. All of them are there. They all have all their details. And there you can also see a gallery of daily deliveries that are happening in some specific warehouses. And you can also watch some videos of the previous informative sessions that we have had. Everything on that YouTube link. So hopefully this is useful for you, and we will continue working in order to have timely access to information, which is very relevant for everyone. We are talking about acquiring medicines and healing materials. And under UNOPS context or public procurement, actually you will be able to see this on our website. On July 1st, 2021, we launched a new version of our procurement manual. It talks also about sustainable procurement. For us, it's very important to comply with the 2030 agenda, and we need to carry out all possible actions in everything we do because we truly want to reach that agenda. A very relevant point has to do with the DRIVE initiative. It started in 2018 in UNOPS. However, UNOPS had been working on sustainable since years ago. As you and our suppliers might know, this initiative has to do with data collection. Data collection might be a familiar topic for many suppliers because it has to do with the form that you filled in for international technical tenders that you get to see on the right. And it also has to do with a self evaluation that our vendors or suppliers do. They tell us where they are in different aspects which are important for the behavioral code of the UN. It's important to know not only what are we buying, but who are we buying it from. That's why we want to work together with all of our suppliers to have improvement actions. What do I mean? Well, in terms of policies, management systems, human rights, same opportunities for everyone, labor regulations, quality management, environmental management, health and safety, contractors. We ask ourselves what our suppliers are doing in all these 10 aspects. So we want you to invite yourselves to also understand where are your own vendors and suppliers. That way we can have a better chain and a better supply chain for everyone that will allow us to comply with the 2030 agenda, and we will also increase and improve our behavior and ethics. So talking about the Drive initiative, we have more than 600 suppliers who have filled in this form. We have started speaking with many vendors because we want to share and we want them to share with us information that they have entered into this form. The idea is to create improvement actions at all different levels. Why is this so important for us? Because we understand that this is a win-win situation. We have received answers from many suppliers, and I know that some others are still working on sharing their answers with us. That's why I want to invite all of those suppliers who were contacted by our Drive colleagues to do this. Please participate, ask us if you need. The idea is that we all together achieve an improvement. What is this improvement about? What are we asking ourselves and what's our goal? Next slide, please. As a result of the responses that we have had from our vendors, we established an improvement plan. Here, we're going to see different figures related to all those suppliers who have joined in a very encouraged way the initiative. And then the next step will be sharing with the suppliers different sessions. We will visit them, we will share documents with them, and we will continue working in order to have a continuous improvement. I say about the self-evaluation results. These are preliminary results only. 60% of suppliers confirmed that they have policies against discrimination, and they also have diversity and inclusion policies. So we're going to visit them, we're going to ask them to tell us what the policy is about, and we will try to see what can we build for the future. And then the other 40%, those that don't have policies, create them. We want to encourage them to have an improvement plan in order to establish these policies. 60% of our suppliers have told us that they still have no action plan in order to improve diversity and inclusion. So we will see what's going on with them, what are they missing, and how can we help them. 60% of our suppliers told us that they have a process for people to earn the same. How can we support gender equality? And how can we foster diversity and inclusion? 70% of our suppliers have told us that they have a process against harassment. So we will try to know what they're doing. We will try to foster this. We will try them to share this with their colleagues from the industry because we want this change to grow. 70% of our suppliers have told us that they have between 30 and 60% of women as part of their staff. So we will ask ourselves, how can we reach a gender equality? How can we contribute to have a fair and better world? This is just one of the dimensions that we have in our Drive initiative. We have 9 more. We aim to ask ourselves where we're at. And the important thing is knowing how to have an improvement plan altogether. So I invite you to join us and to continue improving in these areas, and please join the Drive initiative. Lastly, let me tell you a bit more about our next actions for the 2022 procurement. After this informative session led by Jose Moscoso and our specialist Jose and Federico, we're going to have a joint informative session with Insabi, with our Insabi colleagues, and we will present the strategy for 2022. We aim to invite all stakeholders and it will be open to the public. We will timely inform you about this session. We will organize a work session with women in the pharmaceutical industry. We will also invite you. I'm going to be participating, so I'm going to ask you to join me. The idea is that we all work together and maybe we can create some actions for this improvement initiative. We will have an open consultation session on strategic aspects of tenders and tenders documents. And we will start implementing the 2022 procurement strategy according to the timeline that will be officially presented very soon. We will be close to you and we will be informing you. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass the floor to Jose Moscosa. So, Jose, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning. I welcome you all. Thank you very much for your participation. I was just told that we have more than 500 people watching us via streaming, both in Spanish and in English. So I think that's very good news. It shows both the expectations and interest that everyone has for these procurement processes that we carry out. I don't know if you saw the agenda, but we are going to have 2 modules. First, we're going to talk about general procedures. I think they're going to be more relevant for those companies that have not participated before in UNOPS tenders. If you have, then this is going to be an interesting reminder for everyone. We're going to have a Q&A session. We're going to have a Q&A session. It's going to be an open session. I invite you to tell us your questions and concerns. The idea is to have an agile process. And then the second module will be about more specific topics. We'll really talk about offer submission. We will talk about some results and we will give you some conclusions that we got from the processes that we have carried out. And we're going to give you some advice. We are going to tell you about some critical areas when preparing your offers. For UNOPS, this is all very key. We have had some offers that we're not taking into account because of some specific issues that we will talk about because we don't want the situations to happen again. We will talk about those cases. We will explain you our logic, our processes, and our principles. That way, we won't encounter these errors in the future. This is the first step, as Maria Laura was explaining, for the multi-annual procurement, because that's what we are going to do together with Insabi. The first part has three main objectives. We aim to give you information about the UNGM registry. UNGM means United Nations Global Marketplace. In Spanish, Mercado Global de Naciones Unidas. What is this global marketplace? It mainly has two objectives. One, it is an informative mechanism where different agencies from the system get together. Last year they spent around $18 billion. So, well, they publish their needs, and that's one objective. The other one is telling suppliers what we need, and then we can see who can supply the system. This is very important. That's why at the end I'm going to delve into this topic. I'm going to talk about the offer warranties, and that is a very important subject. We will also talk about the mechanism with which UNOPS receive and evaluates offers. At the end, we will talk for those mechanisms for those who are sending or submitting their tender to ask for clarification. Next slide, please. As I was telling you, UNGM is a common procurement portal in the system. It gathers procurement people from the UN and the community of suppliers. This is a very important concept, and I'd like to highlight it. Many of you have probably participated in tenders since years ago. And not only have you participated in Mexico, but also in other places, you have probably seen that the relationship between those who sell and those who buy are affected by a lack of trust. And because of that, we have had complex contracts and many other things. But we're trying to go beyond. We aim to have a win-win situation, a situation in which both have benefits, because we need from you and you need from us. So we want to have a non-bureaucratic relationship and agile relationship. So that's why that we're saying that here we are gathering sellers and buyers. As I was telling you, here we have many organisms of the United Nations. We have 29 that spent approximately $18 billion last year. All procedures and policies that we will explain are the ones that we use in all countries. What does that mean? We care about procurement. So here in Mexico, if you are part of this portal and if you achieve all the parameters we ask for, you have access to a global market. Once you know our tender processes, you will know every process, because we have the same in China, in Thailand, in Argentina, everywhere. So right now, we're having this medicines and healing materials project in Mexico. But if you are part of this project, you will have many possibilities. Every chamber, every association, every ambassador's embassy will tell their people this option, and of course, you will decide if you want to participate in one tender or the other. But here we're talking about global procurement. Last year, for example, we negotiated the procurement of medicines that have a patent. We had dialogue with many companies. We had very positive results. And the dialogue with these companies was very good. They stopped negotiating with one government in one country. They started negotiating with an international organization. So this has a global vision, a global perspective. If you join, you won't only be able to sell to a country, but to a global market.
this slide. And now with this application form, you will be able to have access to a global marketplace. The registration is free. You have to create an account, you have to be registered, and you will have access to the tender notices, and you will have it will be a prerequisite for you to submit your offers with the e-sourcing system, which is the electronic management system of the procurement processes of the United Nations. And with this, we will show you some short videos that explain each of the stages of the global marketplace and the e-sourcing, and afterwards we will have a session in which we will go through the details, okay? So I will share the video now with you. Looking for a tender notice in UNOPS, in UNGM. UNOPS actually publishes all the business opportunities in the UNGM system. In order to look for a tender notice, go into the UNGM website, log in using your username and your password. Once you have started and you have logged in, you can go into the tender notices in the menu at the left to see the business opportunities of UNOPS. Go into the one that you are interested and click in order to let UNOPS know that you're interested. After some seconds, the button will change into visualize or see document, and it will turn into a green button. Then go into visualize announcements and this or tender notices, and this will lead you to the platform of e-sourcing of UNOPS. Then enter your email, your password, and click on login. Take into account that the email and the password that you will use are the same for the UNGM account. Once you have entered, you will have access to the details of the tender notice of the UNOPS platform, like the reference number, the headline or the title, and a countdown timer to know how long you have for to provide an answer, the answer status, the confirmation of the vendor, the response of the vendor, clarifications during assessment. Inform UNOPS of your intention to submit a response to a tender notice. We would like to know in advance if you have intention to respond to the tender notice or not, because that is very useful information for us to be well organized. So in order to provide this information, click on the tab that says confirmation of vendor, then click on one of the buttons that you see in green or red. We have the intention to submit a response, or no, we are not going to submit a response. This is the red button. If you choose the last option, please provide a reason why. Take into account that you can only click once in one of those buttons, so we need confirmation just for information purposes. You may submit a response even though you selected first the no option. Then request clarification about a notice. If you have questions about a notice, you can request clarifications to UNOPS. In order to submit clarification request, click on request clarification in the information tab or the clarification tab, and then click on request clarification. Then type your question and submit your question. The request and the clarifications will only be visible for you and no other vendor. Take into account that the system will only allow you to submit clarifications before the deadline for clarifications. This date is indicated in the General Information tab. Once UNOPS has responded to your clarification request, it will be published in revisions, the revisions tab within the information about the notice tab. Any response or any answer will be visible for all vendors, but it will not identify the vendor that made the request of clarification. All the vendors that have expressed interest in a tender notice, they will receive automatic notifications every time that UNOPS publishes or releases any clarification or any amendment about the tender notice. Submit a response to a tender notice. In order to respond to a notice, please fill in the blanks in the tab questionnaire. That is information requested by UNOPS. It's an online form. You need to respond to the list of documents. You need to check the list of documents that you need to submit, the details of the financial offer, information about prices that will be requested by UNOPS, the total financial proposal, etc. These requirements are seen, you can see them in the vendor response tab. Once you completed the information required, the color of the numbers in the title of each tab will go from red to green. As part of the process, UNOPS can request you to provide further information in online questionnaires. So click on questionnaires to see the questions and enter your answers. Once you have completed the questionnaire, please click on Save in the bottom part of the page, and remember that the ones that are marked with an asterisk, you need to respond them, and it's mandatory to respond them. You can also submit documents as part of your responses, documents such as the financial statements of a company or specific forms. If there is a requirement to upload specific forms, for example, a submission form, you can provide these editable documents within the tab that says information about the tender. When you have completed the documents, click on the list of documents tab to upload them into the e-sourcing platform. You can also upload the files where it says choose file, and you can drag them directly from this section here. And please take into account that if you need to upload more than one document in the list of documents, the maximum size for each document that has to be uploaded to the platform is 20 megabytes. Before you upload a document in the required document list, in the tab or in the headline that indicates the number or the title of the form, it says whether it's mandatory in orange and blue if it's optional. Once you have uploaded a file, the title will change to the green color. As part of the process, UNOPS may request you to complete details about the financial proposal of your response. Please click on the details of the financial proposal and enter the details of the financial proposal, the total financial offer, the currency, which is mandatory, and comments, which are optional. Once you have completed this, click on Save in the bottom part of the website and make sure you completed all the required information, making sure that all the boxes have been checked and the details are all in green. Then click on the Submit tab and then click on the Submit tab to send your response to UNOPS. Remember that UNOPS will not allow you to send a response if you have not completed all the information or if the deadline has it's no longer available. So please do this in time so you can complete all the required information. It allows you to save all the preliminary responses, the list of documents, and the financial offer details. Once you are ready to send your proposal, you can click on Submit. Look at the response of a tender. Once you have sent the response to a tender notice, you can withdraw the information and withdraw the proposal and edit the proposal. You can only do it before the deadline as it is specified in the General Information tab. In order to go into the details of a tender notice, go into the tab about the information using your user account, and this will provide you with a list of all the tender notices that you said you were interested in. Look at the reference number. In order to see the notice that you are interested in, click on the content of that reference, the title of the tender notice, the date that it was released. It was the date in which it was released or launched by UNOPS, the deadline after which you cannot respond any longer to the tender notice. Then the statement or the status of your response. You have two available status. One is as a draft in blue, when the vendor has not provided response. Submitted, which will be in green when the vendor has submitted the response. And the status of the notice. There are four possible statuses for a tender notice. Open in green, before the deadline for the submission of responses. Assessment in orange, after the deadline, when UNOPS has started the assessment of the answers that were provided, and you may not submit a response when it's in the assessment process. Completed in blue when UNOPS has completed the assessment, and canceled in gray color when the tender notice has been called off or canceled by UNOPS. You can also check the results in the search criteria section. You can check the amount or the tender notices with the number of reference, the date it was released, the deadline, and clicking on that on each column, like modifying a response to a tender notice. You may not modify any response that has been submitted. Actually to modify it, you must withdraw it first and eliminate it, and it will go into draft color, which is blue, and you may modify the content. Go into the response of the vendor tab and modify response as necessary. You may review the information that you added into the questionnaire tab, the list of documents tab, or the financial offer details. When you completed modifying the response, you may submit it once again and make sure that the status says submitted in green. And take into account that if you do not submit your response again, we will consider that it is still a draft or it has not been received yet. So all the responses of a vendor must be sent before the deadline of the submission of responses, which is specified in the general information about the notice within the tab that says information about the notice. You can also see how many days, hours, seconds are left for the deadline of the submission of responses in the right side of the screen. And then withdraw a response. Anytime before the deadline of the submission of responses, you may withdraw one of the responses that you have submitted already. Select the one that you would like to withdraw, and then go into the response of the vendor tab and click in withdraw submitted response. The status will change from green to blue as a draft. Then take into account that UNOPS will not be able to access to any information entered by any vendor that has the status of draft, even though it has been withdrawn. Respond to the clarification requests of UNOPS during assessment. After having submitted a response or a tender, to a tender, they may request clarification. UNOPS will request any clarification only after the deadline of the submission has passed, and that means during the assessment of the proposals. If UNOPS requests for the clarification of assessment to your company, you will receive an automatic notice with the direct link to the tender notice. Click on the direct link that will be included in the email you receive, or go into the clarifications during assessment tab for the tender notice itself. Then go into the respond tab And this will open this text box where you will be able to enter your response and you will be able to upload files as well. Click on submit when you have completed your response, and please be very specific with your response of clarification. Then review the status of a tender notice. If you would like to review what is the status or to check the status of any of your responses, go into the esourcing.unops.org and go into the details and click on see my operations or see my notices. You will see a list that says my notices, and you will see a column that says reference, title, date of publication, deadline, status of response, and status of the notice. You will see it at the right column of the table. There are four possible status. Open in green is open before the deadline of the submission of response. Assessment is in orange after the deadline when UNOPS has started assessing the response, and you may not submit your response when it's in the assessment status. Completed in blue when UNOPS has completed the assessment and has provided results. If several contracts have been awarded, and the completed button will have a link to the list of those that have been awarded, and then cancel when the tender has been canceled by UNOPS. If you have submitted a response to a tender through this system, you will receive an automatic notification when UNOPS has completed the assessment of the responses. This email will inform you on the result of the process, and it will include the contact information of the staff that is responsible for the process if you would like to get more information. You may also see the information of all the awarded contracts through the Ungm section that says contracts awarded. All right. First, to give you peace of mind, all these videos will be available. You will be able to see them in your own time. So before I give the floor to Federico, and also related to the presentation and what we discussed at the beginning, why the United Nations did this global marketplace is because we wanted to make things easier, this link between the vendors and the buyers, and that way we can provide more agility to the process of the submission of the tenders. And this will guarantee confidentiality about the information that is being submitted, and it's reducing the times as well. And also we know exactly about, sometimes we do need to know who is actually providing the information, and this lack of trust sometimes is translated into vendors not wanting to participate. That is why we are making all these efforts to try to spread our processes and to have financial coverage in terms of uncertainty and regarding tenders and time frames, payments, and we want to be transparent about this. So I was talking about having this very good rapport between the vendors and the buyers, because for if someone wins, that means someone else is losing, but no way, that is not the way we see things, because we want to do things efficiently and it can be of benefit for the buyers. We are representing, for example, UN in Mexico, and we are buying directly to Mexican parties, and also we want to be on the side, we want to think on the perspective of the vendors. Now I will give the floor to Federico, who is an expert in UNGM and e-sourcing, who will discuss the most important, the relevant, like high landmarks of this and insights. And then we will be able to have a Q&A session if you have any questions as well. Go ahead, Federico. Thank you. Good morning. I do want to repeat one of the things that were mentioned in the video, which is the most important part of this. First of all, as Jose said, and it is critical to be registered in the UNGM portal to be able to participate in these processes. This is the only way you can submit your proposals. In order to find these notices, I would like to share the screen, to share the slide where it says tender notice. Here you will have to enter the reference number for the process that we will be sharing more ahead in other events, in other communication events. Here it is. Once you find the specific process or the specific tender you're interested in, you have to go into See Documents. It will lead you to the following page. I think we're missing one here. Can we go back to one slide? Before, yeah, we have two steps. The first step is to submit show interest. Then you go into a new screen where you will be able to see more specific information about the process, and you will be able to see documents, to see the tender, and it will lead you to the e-sourcing system, which is the UNOPS system to submit your proposals. Now, besides from the global marketplace and the e-sourcing platform, UNOPS has another system as well. Let's go into the next slide. This system is called X-Market. It's also a tool that has been developed to be able to obtain marketplace information for the marketplace to show interest in different lists of medicines that are being bought across the region, not just in Mexico. So you can have access to this tool through mercado.unops.org. Select the country you're interested in, and you will see a list of medicines that UNOPS is interested in procuring, and you can submit the information of your company, your offer, and you may also indicate prices. We must clarify that this information is market information. What is provided here is not part of a tender. This is a different process. So this is information that you may use for your own processes, and these are the type of tenders that may be open also, or it might be emergency procurement processes if it's necessary. Now let's go into the next slide. To e-sourcing. As Jose mentioned and the video mentioned, in order to log into the e-sourcing platform, you must log in with the same credentials, with the same account you have in UNGM. So if you go directly to esourcing.unops.org, the information is the same that you use in the other platform. So as you may see here, it is also possible to register different emails, so different persons from your company may have access as well. So this will help you expedite the submission of the proposal in case you are having restricted times. So let's go into the next slide. This is the way the homepage looks like, the e-sourcing one. As you may see, you have two timers with the countdown of the deadline of the tender, the submission of the response, and the other is the deadline for the clarification requests. So at this point, you may still send your questions and comments, etc., and request information. You can see two levels of tabs. One is about the information about the tender notice, the response of the vendor, and clarification. When you click on them, you can see another subset of tabs where you see general information, details of the notice, assessment criteria, documents, revisions, and clarification requests. You must take into account that the date and time that is indicated is in the UTC um, time, which is not the same as in Mexico. It is the coordinated time, universal coordinated time. There are several apps that you can use to do the time conversion to Mexico. You must take this into account because this is an information system. So once you reach the deadline, there is no possibility to submit your proposal. So please do check these times on time. Let's go into the next slide. We can see the type of information you see in each screen. Information about the notice. You can see all the details contained in the tender. So this is the electronic format of the solicitation documents. Then the confirmation of the vendor, you must confirm whether you have the intention to submit a response or not. And that is the way we know if you are going to participate or not. This is not binding. If you say you're not going to participate, but at the end of the day you do participate, you may do it as well. Just you just cannot change that specific answer. But if you say yes and then you don't participate, it's okay. There will be no problem after all. It is just for information purposes, so we know how the process is progressing. Then the next tab is the response of the vendor. That is where you will be able to submit your information, to respond to questions, and to upload documents. Then clarifications during the assessment. In this tab, you will be able to request any clarification or to receive any response about the clarification. So it is very, very important for you to know that all the comments, questions are done through the e-sourcing system. We will not respond to any other type of question if you try to contact any of us, any of the persons from the staff of UNOPS, and this may disqualify you if you try to contact one of the officials. You must do it through the e-sourcing platform. Next. Now we are in the information about the tender notice tab, and you may see general information where you see general information about the tender, the deadline, the description, the landmarks, milestones, the dates, times, and you see all these previous conditions to the tender. You must also be part of the meeting. You should participate in the meetings because we provide special or important information. We also have the details, the assessment criteria, documents. There will be several documents, several annexes that you must upload. These are process of the solicitation process. So you must take them into account, and there will be certain forms that you must fill in to submit your offer. Then we have the revisions, clarifications, and amendments. You must be aware that of any amendment that takes place. You must know that all the consultation and all the questions will be answered, and they will be visible for all participants. They may all see the questions and answers. They are anonymous, don't worry. They will be made anonymous. You may not see who posed that question, but you will see the question for everybody in the process. And then you will see a tab where when you will request clarification. Is the only contact point to make questions about the process or any doubt, any clarification, specification you need to know. And let's go into the following tab. Here, and we are just repeating what we said. This is where you can find the tab to make your questions, information about the tender, and then in the second level, it says request clarification, and then you must submit on request clarification. Next, the next slide will talk about the clarifications as well. As I mentioned before, it is very important to pose your questions before the deadline of the clarifications. So please start working on your proposal as soon as it is published as a tender, because there are certain time frames or certain deadlines that it might be too late afterwards to make any question or to submit your proposal. And then the last point here tells you about where you can find the answers to the questions and the clarifications. Okay, so I think this went beyond the video presentation. Thank you so much, Federico, for the explanation of the system and the e-sourcing system. We have 30 minutes to take questions from both the participants who are here in person and through the online session. So if any of you has any question, it might not only be questions, we may also receive answers, comments, and feedback. I understand that most of you have participated and you have represented companies that have been part of our process before. So you may be familiar with the process already, the process of being registered into the marketplace, and you have used the sourcing system before. Possibly, and this will be a new experience for another user or someone that is planning to use this platform and in this process. So I would like to hear you, and so I would like to open the floor now to any comment or question. Please.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here. I am from AMIS, the medical device sector. We're working together as a sector. We have a question that we have had over and over, and we understand it's complicated to solve in a system. It has to do with the medical device and healing material sector. The main issue is that all companies have different presentations from the same product in order to deliver to the end user. Many companies have not been able to participate, or they have had to change their presentations in the place they manufacture or store. Places that have to be authorized by the authority, and this has generated different problems. First, to favor competition among companies, and two, those who have decided to participate for 2021 are exploring if, economically speaking, this is sustainable for 2022. In the past, when this issue was generated for medical devices, the Mexican authorities were the ones that were authorizing step by step, but I understand that in an automatic system this is not possible. So my question is, this is a very specific situation from our sector. I don't know if you have seen it, if you have solved it. I don't know how is the system working on it. We're going to hear more questions, and at the end, we're going to answer. Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the presentations. I have one question about Laura's presentation. Well, first, let me say that everything presented was very interesting. Everything about the signature of the agreement, all the results from the procurement process, but we want to know the role of UNOPS in the medicines procurement process in the future. Lately, we have seen direct purchases from Insabi. We have heard that some government organisms will be involved in the procurement process. So it's very important for us to understand what are all the different schemes that will be followed. Thank you. Hi, I'm Carmen Margarita. My question has to do with the UNGM system. I am wondering if this is already implemented, if you have evaluated different users to know if it's working, if people like it, and what's happening in terms of the daily use of this platform. I'm Rodolfo Tobar. I represent Canacintra. This might not be a question, but a comment, a concern that we have. It has to do with the 2021 procurement process. It's very important that we have access to immediate information and not information through emails as we have been requested. I can say this openly. When there is a question, we ask, or let's say that we want to clarify something. We do it via email and we don't always get an answer. The members of the chamber have said plenty of times that they have sent 10, 12, 15 emails and they never receive an answer. So it's very important that you can give us a point person, someone who can call in order to get the answer. Because this ends up becoming an issue for the company, and it might also be creating an issue for you, for the institution, and for the patients. Because due to that, we don't have enough supply. If you allow me, I could give you some examples. Some concepts have the VAT tax included. We were wondering some things about that. We sent some emails. Then they included the VAT. They changed the description, but ISTE or SEDENA to Mexican institutions need to know the specific amount. If you divide the total amount by the added VAT, decimals of what you are saying and what the number is do not match. So that's why these institutions do not accept the delivery of the products. Thus, it's very important that you give us another option to clarify some of our questions that are truly affecting the operation of what we're doing. That's my comment or my suggestion, let's say. Thank you very much. Three more questions. I represent the National Chamber of the Pharmaceutical Industry. My name is Alejandro Cordova. I have a comment, not a question. It's related to what Canacintra and Amela were already saying. There were some expectations about this session. We wanted to know about the 2021 process, how UNOPS is going to participate in this procurement process, the percentage of keys, the percentage of the procurement. So we are wondering if UNOPS will continue participating. At the beginning, you said that you signed an agreement with Insabi. I would think it would be important for Insabi to be here as well to share their information. They're not here. And this is related to what Canacintra was saying. There are many problems today in terms of the logistics process, the distribution process, and all processes at a national level. We are very concerned because of that. We don't know why are we talking about 2022 if we have not solved all the issues that we have in 2021. We think that the distribution process has not been efficient. So we do consider as a pharmaceutical industry that it's very important to solve all these issues immediately because we have lost lots of time. And we'd like to participate in the design of the tender process from the beginning. That way we can have a better dialogue between you, Insabi, and us. So as an industry, we can generate efficient processes, which is very important for everyone. That's my comment. Thank you very much. I know there are more questions and comments. Please be patient. I think it's better if we answer. That way we can have a better dialogue. First, let me talk about medical supplies. Here we have one of our specialists who I'm sure will be able to answer. But before that, let me talk about what I can answer as part of my role. UNOPS will continue buying not only in 2022, but also in the 22-24 period. We're working with Insabi. As you know, Insabi is the entity that consolidates. It gets the requirements from the organizations participating. The main points of the consolidation is defining the keys to be purchased, how many, and terms and delivery dates for those medicines. That's what we get from Insabi. Then UNOPS, both in Mexico and many other countries, start with a tender process. In this very specific meeting, I wanted to apologize. I don't know if the invitation was very clear, but we said that we were not going to talk about the specific supply of 2021-2022 because we don't know the keys and amounts yet. But we thought it was important to show you, if you already know them or if you are starting to work with us, what the procedure is. I truly thank for the honesty of your comments. I want to share the information I can give you right now. For sure, we're going to continue being involved. Of course, there are some entities buying because in the previous tenders, we were not able to cover 100% of them. And you know that better than we do. If we don't cover those tenders, someone has to. We are not covering all keys, so some others are selling and buying them. The sessions that we're going to have, actually, when we talk about Module 2, I'm going to show you, and maybe I'm talking now about Module 2. I will show you some of the conclusions and results that we got from our tenders. I wanted to confirm that when we have everything ready, when we have all the information, we are going to talk to Insabi. We will have an open consultation and we will share the basic model with you so that we can have a dialogue and see what can be improved, changed, what's your perspective. All comments are non-binding. That's important to say. We will consider all comments received. Some will be translated into modifications and some others won't. If they are not, then we will explain why. But yeah, there is some will of doing something together. Talking about what our colleague said, lack of information and delays in responses, I'm going to take note of that. I am honestly not involved in that area, but I understand your concern. I obviously do. I'm taking note of it and we will solve it. I know that there have been different meetings with the chamber and associations to talk about different topics, but if this is your comment and if you know that the meetings that we have had are not enough, we will go beyond and we will see how to solve that. I don't know if someone can help me answer the first question. We're not going to give you very technical information, and we don't know those technical aspects. So we have two specialists. They are here remotely. They couldn't be here because of COVID restrictions, but they're here with us, and let's see if they can help us. Yeah, can you please connect one of our specialists, please?
Hola, buenos días.
Hello, good morning.
Saludos a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
¿Pueden confirmar si se escucha y se ve?
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Hola, hola.
Yes, Lautaro,
¿Se
we can
escucha?
hear you.
¿Se ve? Ok. Bueno, en base a la pregunta sometida,
Based on the
tenemos
question,
en claro las diferencias
we
tipificantes
know the meaningful
en materia de
differences in
medicamentos
terms
y
of
material de curación.
medicines and healing material.
Nosotros nos tenemos que apegar
We
a,
have to
primero, a la clave requerida por INSABI, quien es quien consolida y agrega los
adhere ourselves
requerimientos
to
individuales de
the
cada entidad y estado, siempre en basamento a el Compendio Nacional de Insumos para la Salud. Hemos advertido durante la recepción de ofertas y evaluaciones técnicas de las mismas algunos motivos como los que se traen en la pregunta en respuesta, pero tenemos que tener apego a el Compendio Nacional de Insumos para la Salud porque es nuestro comparador en materia de descripción y requerimientos técnicos. Es un punto que podemos levantar siempre separando no el tratamiento, pero sí el abordaje en cuanto a material de curación y medicamentos y conversarlo con los especialistas tanto de INSABI o las entidades y eventualmente también con el Consejo Nacional de Salubridad. Muchas gracias.
now I'd like to continue with more questions or comments from the audience. Hello, good morning. My company represents different companies in the health sector, companies that have already participated in previous tenders. My question has to do with the flexibility or strategy that you have in order to avoid, or well, let's say, the challenges that you might have in terms of sanitation registries before COFEPRIS. I know that there are some processes for foreign companies. I know the process has not moved forward very fast. And I know that some businesses were not closed before the long processes that we need to carry out before COFEPRIS. Thank you. Let's go for a last question. Enrique Martinez from the Pharmaceutical Institute, talking about the procurement process. Well, the response process causes many uncertainties, not only for companies, but for the industry in general. I know that there have been some direct procurement processes with very high prices. Well, people have already mentioned that. But if we see the information that you have published, everything that was mentioned at the beginning of this session, well, I would say that in contracts we're missing some information based on what was presented before. So I think that we're missing around 15 keys. My point after everything I've said is let's try to make all the information available that will contribute to the transparency that we're all asking for. I'm talking about the information that was shared, but I should also say that we'd like to have more information about contracts, prioritized purchases. That's not very clear, so it would be great to have all the information so that we're all clear on what's going on. We'd like to have more information in terms of everything that UNOPS is doing. Okay. May I try to answer these two questions? First, COFEPRIS. COFEPRIS is working with INSABI and with us. COFEPRIS has become more flexible. COFEPRIS is trying to have more flexible processes in terms of the registry. The requirement and the tender part I can explain because I cannot explain the technical part of the process, but the registry in COFEPRIS will not be an absolute requirement in order to submit a tender and be evaluated. It's gonna be required just before the contract is awarded. So by doing it like this, all companies will be able to participate. When we open tenders, being before COFEPRIS will not be the first filter. There are many other filters involved. But of course, if they, as companies, are more competitive, then they will be able to start the registry before COFEPRIS. So, well, my point is that COFEPRIS is working with us. We have a close cooperation. I must say that people from COFEPRIS have been great. Our common goal is having more suppliers in our database. We're working together on that, and we have already received the COFEPRIS support. Maybe you know this, and you are aware of other purchases in the public sector in which being registered before the authorities such as COFEPRIS is required, but here we have been more flexible because we want also to include companies that are not in Mexico or companies that are in Mexico but have no sanitary registry for some products. I know that registering is an important investment, and I'm sure that there is a commercial decision behind, so that won't be required. Now, talking about the lack of information, thank you for your comment. And if you could send those an email or a written document saying what information is missing or where do you think that we could provide more information, that would be great. Because in Mexico and all countries in which we're operating, we aim to have transparency. That's why for us that comment is absolutely important. The project has a communications webpage, and there in that communications webpage, we are providing all the information that we think you should have, but please let us know if there's more information that we should be providing. Hopefully we can get your comments, the written document or written note saying what information is not consistent or what information is missing from your perspective, and that way we will tackle the issue. Oh, we have 2 more minutes. I don't know if we have more questions or comments. Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Good morning. Arturo Manriquez from the Association of Generic Medicines Distribution. I wrote my question because I want to be brief. What are the measures you're going to adopt as UNOPS to prevent manufacturers to participate if they are using dumping or subvention in other countries? Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. I would like to relate this with a comment that we had before. It was related to how long it took us to present our results. And we're going to talk a bit more about that in our second module. But UNOPS is carrying out a very deep analysis of who the suppliers are. It is what we call a due diligence process. Due diligence is a very common term in the industry. So talking about registries, manufacturing good practices, certifications, we look who the good suppliers are. We do a very deep due diligence in order to avoid not only quality issues, but unfair contracts. Maybe you know that the UN, together with the World Bank and the International Development Bank, share a list of suppliers who have had unethical behaviors. I'm not only talking about illegal behaviors, I'm talking about unethical behaviors. So this is one process we look at. When we receive offers, when offers are submitted, we first of all verify that they are not in a list of bad suppliers. Of course, there might be some companies that are not honest or that have no good practices that have not been identified. That's why we carry out all of our analysis. We are acting on behalf of the Mexican government, and we are the ones who sign. So that is our responsibility. If we have binding relationships with a company, we become responsible. That's why we do our due diligence. These are the mechanisms that we use. And sometimes doing that take more time. The analysis process itself takes more time, not only because we do a deep analysis of those who want to be our suppliers, but sometimes we need to ask for information. Let me tell you about the process. If there is a red flag, in addition to the information that we asked for at the beginning of the tender, we start to ask for additional information, and we start to ask for references. So this is a mitigation process that sometimes takes a lot of time. If we have companies that don't pose any risk because of their good practices or reputation, then things move forward faster. But yeah, sometimes the process takes longer because of everything I explained. It's 10:30. I don't know if you have other comments or if we can have a coffee break. We have 30 minutes for a coffee break and we are going to meet back at 11 a.m. We will start with our second module. We will be talking about more specific items. We are going to talk about the UNGM and the e-sourcing, but now we're going to go deeper. So if you want, let's have a coffee break and we'll meet in half an hour. Thank you very much.
as we said, this is going to be a more specific session about the assessment, the submission of the offers. So before we start, I would like to complete the answer talking about certain figures that were just not adding up or matching. So we have also experts remotely. Perhaps Jose would like to add up to what I'm saying, to what I was responding, and these the taxes issue. I would like to start with the follow up to that question. Good morning. Related to the value added tax, my colleagues have told me that there have been problems with the calculations of the VAT and the number roundup. So some entities are rejecting them. So what we're doing is we're doing an agreement and with every institution to know how to handle these cases and to have a credit note to be able to cover these differences of cents and pesos given the roundup. This way we would be expecting for the submission and not to have any more delays from here on. And you can receive the supplies in the warehouses. The problem comes when submitting the invoices because the administrative areas will not accept any difference, even if it's just 1 cent, which is basically rounding up the VAT tax. And it would be important to have a document of naming these institutions and knowing how to handle this. I think what's important here is that the actual situation is that at the end of the day, that document, it's very important. It goes hand in hand, like the reception of the product and the acceptance of the documents and the admissibility of documents. Yeah, we have roundtables actually to discuss this. And probably, I'm very sure that we will find a solution. These are specific issues, but the impact, as you said, could be, I mean, if it leads to the non-reception and the non-admissibility of documents, it becomes a problem. So we're going to start with the second model. Basically, here we're going to provide suggestions, recommendations for the submission of the offers and proposals. We're going to talk about the process of the assessment and acceptance of proposals by UNOPS. We're going to talk about the general conditions of the contracts, and we're going to provide clarification to the questions of the submitted throughout the session. So let's go to the first slide. Next. Let's see, we can go to the following. And I changed the order of the presentation. The tables that we are going to present now were going to be presented at the end of the session, but because there are so many questions regarding the recent tender processes, this is for you to know that this is a synthesis of the results. First, I'm going to show you all these, the healing material issue. And 1,183 keys were submitted. We received offers with 952 keys. 231 were not received. We had keys with recommendation of awarding 530 and none awarded 422. So you may agree that the non-awarded number of keys is too high. This is what we were saying, that we should work together, vendors and buyers. We should agree on, we should know which are exactly the reasons why these keys have not been awarded. Also, in some cases, you're going to see what is not in bold letters below. You're going to see the disabled vendors, the sanctioned vendors, 91, which are vendors sanctioned that were in the eligibility list by the Mexican government and United Nations, but and the cooperation agreements, but at the end they were disabled. And I think this is related to the question posed by a colleague about our mechanisms to have certainty of the honesty of the companies. Well, probably many of those that did not have good business practices or well established business practices are part of these disabled vendors for us. The preliminary assessment, the incomplete administrative documentation, well, the areas, this is an area in which we have room for improvement because we should be clear, we should be more flexible, and companies should provide quality with the offers they submit because they want to be qualified and we want them to qualify. The broader our competitors' base is better conditions we can provide for the Mexican government. So we are going to notify you about incomplete documentation. The pre-qualification are those that haven't yet been selected to be awarded a contract a contract. And incomplete technical documentation, well, we haven't they haven't been assessed in all technical, we cannot assess them in all technical aspects, and because of the non-reasonable prices or above the baseline or the maximum price. So this is basically a summary of what happened in the procurement of medicine. As you can see in the headline, we are making the reference to ITB 17938, 17978, and 17979. These are open bids for the procurement of medicines, and this is a result of all three tenders, and we have this table for this. Now let's get into detail, but I did want to move forward with this, and I wanted to present you this because it goes hand in hand with the comments that we received before the coffee break. And also, I believe that it gives you more background and it sets the pace for what we are going to say as follows. Now, healing materials, 631 keys submitted, well, interested, non offer received 86, and this leads to a conversation like non-received. Why? Because they are not manufacturing them anymore, because the entities are asking for something that the industry cannot provide anymore. This is the cleansing of the purging of the demand process. Then keys with offers 545, keys with our recommendation 345, none awarded 200. From my standpoint, too many keys non awarded. And that goes hand in hand with the comment that we made earlier, whether there are certain entities buying on their own, and 200 of them not being awarded is not logical. It shouldn't be the case, which means that UNOPS has to be strong from the beginning because we obviously need more having more dialogue with the industry. And non-awarded ones and the disabled vendors for the same reasons that we said before, which are 51 preliminary assessment. Fortunately, no one was disqualified at that stage. Pre-qualification, there was just one company that did not meet all the requirements. Incomplete technical documentation 38. This is an error, and this is something that can be completely addressed and solved. 38 tenders, well, offers were left behind just because they did not provide all the technical information. So I do want to tell the companies, please make sure that you are checking all the boxes, that you are submitting all the documentation, and that your proposals have all the documents needed. Because I must say that when UNOPS, well, we assess a proposal, and when we disqualify one, we are resilient to do so, but we need to meet the requirements. We need to be fair, we cannot be biased. So these are errors that could be addressed, but lead you to a disqualification. The non-reasonable prices in terms of the reasonability, the prices that are not fair, well, 104, and with no financial capacity, well, they are not completely disqualified, but they are being awarded certain batches within their own financial capacity, or only in those batches when the financial capacity has been exceeded, then it is being awarded to others. And there was only one batch that was cancelled. So basically, this is like a screenshot of all the healing materials and the supplies, medical supplies, and the processes that we have carried out so far on healing materials. We are referring to two specific processes that have been completed, and in the same line that we were discussing before the coffee break, Jose will be talking about more thorough aspects of this. And then, of course, we will have another Q&A session, and then I will share some measures that we are implementing to give better access to the companies, to these tenders. Please, Jose. Thank you. I will address some general recommendations for the submission of the offers. Many of these offers are focused on the use of the e-sourcing system and the control system, and some insights to reduce the amount of problems that you may have and the amount of clarifications that you may send or that you may be asked to provide. Okay. One of the first recommendations is to read all the documents included in the tender notice, to read everything that's being described in the e-sourcing system, all documents including the contract model. Normally, or very frequently, what happens is that the vendors do not pay attention to the contract model, and the special conditions of the contract that is being included is a standardized contract. It's not going to change the premise, the recitals, the clauses. So it is important for the vendors to know the rules of the game whenever they are going to bid.
Como parte de los aprendizajes y de las mejoras del presente proceso, se están modificando algunos requerimientos con relación a la garantía de sostenimiento de ofertas. José lo va a comentar más adelante, pero sí es importante que lo revisen, especialmente los licitantes que ya han recibido una notificación de ser precalificados frente a los que no están precalificados. Entonces van a haber, digamos, como dos mecanismos de sostenimiento de oferta, y es importante que lo tengan presente. También tener presente que existe una serie de documentos que se marcan como obligatorios, ya en el video que vimos, pero reiterando lo que decía el video, si un documento está marcado como obligatorio no los va a dejar presentar la oferta, ¿verdad? Pero sí es importante tener presente esto, ¿no? ¿Qué es lo que evita que ustedes terminen de presentar una oferta? Puede ser este caso. Bien lo dijo Federico, tener presente que las fechas y las horas son en UTC, ¿verdad? Es un tiempo universal coordinado, esto debido a que UNOPS trabaja a nivel global y entonces no podemos estar dando fechas y horas en tiempo local, y es importante en ese sentido hacer uso de los contadores que se muestran ahí para tener, digamos, saber con precisión cuánto tiempo queda, ya sea para presentar la oferta o para presentar una aclaratoria. Y es fundamental tener presente, ¿no?, que una vez que cierre el periodo de presentación de ofertas no va a haber una forma de recibir la oferta, ni por correo ni en formato físico. El sistema no los va a dejar avanzar. aunque esté en borrador, lista para presentar, no los va a dejar avanzar. Entonces, sí, aquí es importante hacerse el tiempo. Siguiente, por favor, siguiente slide. Diga.
¿En qué momento podemos saber cuando un licitante es precalificado o no precalificado?
Ok, la pregunta que nos han hecho es, ¿en qué momento se puede saber cuando un licitante es precalificado o no precalificado? Bien, al cierre de estos procesos de licitación de los de medicamentos y material de curación, como parte de las notificaciones de resultados, no solamente de la adjudicación de contratos, a los licitantes, a todos se les emitió una carta, se les envió una carta en la que se les indicaba su estatus, si habían sido precalificados o si no habían sido precalificados. En este momento y en estos procesos solamente se han precalificado o precalificaron los proveedores, pudieron precalificar los proveedores o los licitantes que participaron en la licitación anterior. Ahora, en estos nuevos eventos, licitantes que no han participado anteriormente van a poder presentar sus documentos y van a poder quedar precalificados si cumplen con todos los requerimientos. Entonces, espero haber contestado su pregunta. Listo. Por favor, la slide. Bueno, mientras nos ponen la slide, no está de más recordar que es importante verificar que el producto ofertado corresponde a lo requerido en el documento de licitación. Hemos encontrado, atrás por favor, la slide anterior, hemos encontrado algunos casos en que los licitantes, pues por el volumen de lotes, intercambian, ¿no? Y dicen, esta oferta corresponde al lote 3 en lugar del lote 4. Entonces, hay que estar claros y ser muy puntuales y verificar de que corresponde exactamente a lo que queremos ofertar. Recomendamos siempre preparar con antelación la información y la documentación solicitada, ya sea con relación al propio licitante o con relación a los lotes ofertados. Esto les va a facilitar la preparación de la oferta, la carga en el sistema, ¿ya? Y no va a ser, digamos, un obstáculo el estar cargando información y buscándolo. Entonces, es importante que se organicen, como dijo Federico, una vez que nosotros publiquemos, es bueno que hagan la revisión de los documentos, hagan la revisión del sistema de sourcing y empiecen a preparar el expediente que corresponde a su oferta para cargarlo en el sistema. Adelantándome un poco, una de las mejoras del sistema de sourcing es que vamos a incluir formularios en el sistema sobre las ofertas técnicas directamente en el sistema, no en Excel. Entonces, sí es importante que los licitantes tengan presente y tengan claro y verifiquen que la información que están subiendo para un lote en particular corresponda a ese lote ofertado y responda a lo solicitado, ¿no? Se pide también, se le recomienda siempre verificar el precio, que el precio corresponda a la moneda, ¿verdad? Eso es muy importante, ya que un error de ese tipo puede, al hacer comparación de diferentes monedas y aplicar una tasa cambiaria, puede ser de que se descalifique una oferta o no sea competitiva por el tema de que, no sé, pusieron precio en dólares, pusieron moneda en dólares y el precio corresponde realmente a pesos, al convertirlo a pesos se vuelve no competitivo. Entonces, eso es bien importante. Sobre los documentos que se cargan en el sistema, sí solicitamos que verifiquen que todas las páginas sean legibles. Nos hemos encontrado con documentos, especialmente con documentos legales, que son documentos de hace muchos años, que no son legibles o vienen parciales, vienen cortados. Sí es importante que para facilitar la lectura de los documentos, la revisión de las ofertas, que estos documentos sean legibles y que están cargados en la sección que corresponde, para facilitar también la búsqueda de los documentos. Nuevamente, preparar la oferta con suficiente tiempo, no solamente el tema fuera del sistema, sino que en el sistema siempre está la posibilidad de retirar la oferta para hacer una modificación y volverla a cargar, pero por favor no dejen al último momento darle enviar a la presentación, a la oferta, porque puede suscitarse un problema un problema de conectividad que les evite llegar a tiempo. Entonces, y aquí reiteramos que UNOPS no va a aceptar ofertas que no estén dentro del sistema. Bueno, con relación a las ofertas, bueno, reiterando, ¿no? Si no se ha completado la información requerida, no van a poder presentar. Entonces, el sistema en ese sentido sí tiene la facilidad de ser como una guía, bien decían los videos, ¿no? Si está en verde, la sección al lado de la etiqueta ya se está completado. Entonces, es importante pues de que vayan revisando cada una de las secciones y completándolas para poder entregar su oferta. Siguiente, por favor. Reiterarles que pueden retirar y editar su oferta, su presentación, su respuesta, las veces que deseen antes de la fecha límite de presentación de ofertas. Entonces, no tengan miedo, pueden presentarla, retirarla, volverla a presentar, no queda registro, los documentos que bajen no es que quedan en el sistema, sino que se reemplazan por los nuevos documentos. Entonces, en ese sentido, sí pueden utilizar esa herramienta con absoluta confianza. Reiterarles también un tema que salió en como consulta en los procesos anteriores fue el tema de la seguridad y el tema de la confidencialidad. Reiterarles que UNOPS no tiene acceso a ningún documento antes de la fecha de apertura de ofertas. No podemos, ni soporte, ni nadie del equipo local, ni a nivel de sede tiene acceso a eso, porque respetamos mucho y tenemos mucho cuidado con el tema de confidencialidad de la información, especialmente pues acceder antes a esa información antes de la evaluación. Entonces, eso sí es importante. Anterior, por favor, la anterior. Quiero reiterar esto que es importante. Hemos visto, especialmente en las licitaciones anteriores, que habían algunas iniciativas para tratar de, fuera de UNOPS, para tratar de explicar cómo licitar con UNOPS, cómo usar el sistema. No sé si eran de índole gratuita o pagado, pero sí es importante que sepan de que el registro.
But it is important to know that the Ungm registration and the submission of offers is completely free. The support is free, the guidance is free. So please do go ahead, take your time to navigate through the website, through the e-sourcing platform to get familiar with it. There are emails, there is a contact email, there are frequently asked questions, and there are available videos in different languages to use the e-sourcing. So it is not necessary to use a third party for that. And then also, as we told you during the coffee break, we are doing some improvements to the system to make it friendlier, to make it better, for you to upload also the information in a more orderly fashion. Next. Now going into the process and the process itself, how does UNOP does the procurement? We have the assessment and selection process. And this is during a tender notice for medicines, medical supplies, healing materials. And in this tender notice, we define mandatory requirements, technical requirements, experience of the vendor requirement, legal requirement, and that is why there are several stages to review the compliance of all these requirements. Why is this important? Because under this, with this methodology that is called the lowest offer complying with the requirements, the main...
Donde dice técnicamente conforme, donde cumple la mayoría de los requisitos. En los llamados a licitación es sustancialmente conforme. ¿Qué quiere decir esto? Que todos los requisitos deben de ser cumplidos para que un proveedor pueda ir avanzando. Entonces, en las diferentes etapas, si proyectamos la siguiente slide, por favor, en las diferentes etapas que estamos viendo acá, pues cada oferta, cada licitante y cada oferta va pasando por estas etapas de evaluación. Entonces, hay una primera etapa que se llama etapa de criterios formales y de elegibilidad, en las cuales se evalúa, bueno, qué documentación ha presentado el proveedor, si es completa su oferta, si el proveedor es elegible o no elegible, de acuerdo a lo que incluso José ha mencionado, que está en listas de inelegibilidad y este tipo de situaciones. Si pasa todo esto, pues pasa a la siguiente etapa, que es los criterios de calificación, que nosotros pueden ver ahí, que se llama la precalificación, especialmente para los licitantes, que es la primera vez que participan con nosotros. Entonces, los licitantes que ya están precalificados van a encontrar que en esa sección los requerimientos de documentos se han flexibilizado mucho, o sea, se han minimizado. Tanto así que casi no tienen que presentar documentos, tal vez alguna actualización, bien lo mencionaba José ahora, una actualización de algún documento, pero no es necesario presentar absolutamente todos los documentos. Eso va a facilitar a los licitantes que ya están precalificados la presentación de su oferta. Aquellos licitantes que, aquellos licitantes que pasan la precalificación, o sea, están habilitados, ya no se evalúa al licitante, ya pasamos las dos primeras etapas, tiene que ver con la oferta y con el licitante. Después entramos a la oferta de lote, al tema lote, y entonces entramos a los aspectos técnicos. Tenemos unos criterios técnicos habilitantes que tienen que ver con registro sanitario y algunas condiciones muy básicas para que el producto sea considerado como habilitado para continuar en la evaluación. Y después, los productos de precio más bajo, por ejemplo, en un lote en particular, aquel producto de precio más bajo que haya sido habilitado técnicamente, pasa a la evaluación complementaria. Entonces, en la evaluación complementaria, que es una evaluación técnica, ya se evalúa más a detalle otro tipo de documentos. No voy a entrar en detalle de los documentos porque ya es un tema bastante técnico, pero es importante que sepan de que la evaluación técnica sí está dividida en dos etapas, ¿no? Para también acelerar la evaluación técnica. Posteriormente de la evaluación técnica, para atrás por favor, posteriormente de la evaluación técnica, entramos a lo que se llama la evaluación de precios o de oferta económica o financiera, como le desean llamar. Pero la evaluación de precios es lo que hace es que agarra cada oferta más baja habilitada técnicamente, sustancialmente, ¿verdad? Sustancialmente conforme de precio más bajo, y hacemos lo que llamamos un análisis de razonabilidad de precios. ¿Qué hacemos con el análisis de razonabilidad? Pues tomamos precios de referencia de otros procesos, de precios históricos y comparamos ese precio frente el precio del precio más bajo frente a esos precios y determinamos si el precio es razonable o no. Y en función de eso se puede llamar a negociación o si la negociación después no da buen resultado, se rechaza el producto. Entonces, una vez que ya hemos finalizado, digamos, toda la evaluación de precios, ya tenemos conformado cuántos lotes se pueden asignar a cada licitante, entramos a lo que José mencionaba hace un momento, la capacidad financiera del licitante. Y entonces ahí hay unos criterios que dice cuál es el límite de la capacidad financiera del licitante y en función de esa capacidad financiera se asignan los lotes. Si el licitante tiene sobrada capacidad financiera, pues todos los lotes se le pueden asignar o adjudicar. Si no, entonces tenemos que ver algunas opciones. Las opciones pueden ser, entre otras, no necesariamente son estas, o solamente esta, es por ejemplo, si no tiene capacidad, es alguno de esos lotes, si son más de uno, verificar si hay otro licitante a un precio razonable al que se le puede adjudicar en caso de que hubiese. Hay casos en los cuadros que mostró José, que habían 5 lotes que no fueron adjudicados por capacidad financiera. Eso quiere decir que el licitante que tenía ese lote no tenía capacidad financiera y no había una segunda oferta. Entonces no había más opción que dejarlos fracasados. Los pliegos de licitación va a estar... etcétera. Y finalmente, y no menos importante, es la verificación de antecedentes. el tema del due diligence que decía, que mencionaba José hace un momento atrás. En el due diligence lo que se busca es ver con otra óptica al proveedor, no solamente el aspecto
Is
formal.
seeing the supplier with a different lens. We are trying to see what are the possibilities for them to participate. We see if they have participated in other similar processes. So based on the award and the result of the evaluation, we award the process or the project. This is not done at a local level, but everything is sent to an independent body. We look at the process and then we award. That's very important to keep in mind. Now talking about the contract. In the tender document, we have all the information. First, we have the selection process, all the information and all the information about the contract and under which conditions it will be executed. As part of the tender document, we have the long-term model or the short-term model, depending on the mechanism. So let's talk about the PO. The PO is a contract for us. A contract funds will be exchanged. If UNOPS issues a PO, it means that the funds are ready. Well, of course, they will be moved later, but they can know for sure that the funds are available. POs are issued for amounts higher than $2,500. Talking about medicines and healing materials, we know for sure that the amounts are higher than 2,500. So as a binding contract between UNOPS and the supplier, we have the PO. That's the only binding document. The PO includes the PO itself. That means what we're buying, but it includes some other attachments which are part of the contract itself. We have the general conditions from UNOPS. These are included in the tender process, some special conditions. We can change, eliminate, or add central conditions. Then we have the list of requirements, everything that's being procured, the list of prices, and every other document defined on the basis of the tender. And we need to include all of that as part of the PO, such as the delivery plan. All those documents are part of the PO. And it's very important to say that the PO, as I just said, is the binding document. It is the only document relating UNOPS with the supplier in an official way. Some suppliers, well, tenders that then become suppliers, were addressed by UNOPS to sign a long-term agreement. What is a long-term agreement? As the name states, it is a contract between UNOPS and the supplier for a defined period of time for the supplier to supply UNOPS with goods or services at specific prices set for that period of time. What's important about this long-term agreement is that UNOPS can, if required, issue as many POs as needed in that long-term agreement so that we can cover all demand. The LTA or long-term agreement can include discounts per volume and many other things. And from the LTA, we have procurement orders. Let's say that the umbrella contract is the LTA, but as I said, the binding document is the procurement order. So we can say that the LTA is just an agreement among the parties. LTAs can be valid from 1 to 3 years according to what it is established, and they are going to be accepted by both parties. But of course, we need the seller's performance to be acceptable. Saying that we have an LTA for 3 years does not mean that it will last 3 years. If the performance is not the accepted performance, then it can last a shorter period of time. It aims to ensure the supply at competitive prices, standardize processes, and improve the efficiency of the processes. If we have a long-term agreement, then we don't issue the tender again and we don't start everything from scratch. So this obviously improves the efficiency of the processes. Thus, we can say that the LTA is something you should know about. It does not mean that the LTA will be given just to one supplier, and we can analyze what's happening with all the keys that we are managing, even if they're part of a long-term agreement. Talking about very important contract conditions is the delivery plan. You all know that we have 11 stores or warehouses located in Mexico City and the metropolitan area, as well as in the state of Mexico. If there are no important changes, this will remain. UNOPS might request the contractor. Here, we're not talking about the supplier, but the contractor with whom we have APO. So UNOPS can ask the contractor to advance in terms of the deliveries and to do the deliveries early if INSABI needs that and if there is availability. In order to do this, another agreement needs to be made. The deliveries, as scheduled, will have a monthly plan. They will have an amount to be delivered every 30 days. We need to take into account, of course, that the situation is changing, that the reality changes in terms of the medicines availability. So the definite delivery program, the one that needs to be complied with, is going to be defined when issuing the purchase order. So at the end, we will have an agreed and official delivery plan. I lastly that there might be changes in what was agreed, but as long as they are within what was agreed, they can happen. So the supplier needs to tell UNOPS about the changes, and then UNOPS is going to spread the information about such changes. This will not imply an additional cost. The address can change as well, as long as it is in Mexico City or the metropolitan area or the state of Mexico. We are not thinking about changing the delivery places. And I guess that's what I have for you. Thank you very much. Now I would like to open the floor for a Q&A session. I don't know if there are comments or questions. And then we'll continue. Thank you very much, Jose. I think this is a great opportunity for us as embassies in Mexico. It's great to get to know more about the work that you are doing. I want to thank you for your presentation, which was very clear. Jose, in your presentation, you were talking about the electronic system. You were saying that you have the possibility of looking at data. I think that electronic security is very important and key. I don't know if you have had any attacks on the system. This is a question that we have heard before. It's important to say that in the headquarters, where we have a team looking at the system, we have many IT security standards. We always make sure that we're minimizing risks and vulnerabilities before external attacks. I don't know of any attack that we have had. I don't know that we have had victims of a security attack. So that's the only thing I can tell you. Oh, and Federico is telling me that the system is audited by external parties who help us to identify vulnerabilities and risks. Thank you. Hello again, can you hear me? Representing the medical devices sector here, I know there are some other people from other industries that might ask something different, but during the break we were talking and I realized that we have something in common. POs are very concerning for us, and let me explain you why. One of the pillars for the medical devices sector is the fulfillment, compliance, and integration and integrity of actions. In order to comply with these plans, we need to have a good process to make sure that there are no errors or that there are not lack of compliances. What have we seen during these weeks? Because we don't have the same schedule as the medical sector has, but what we see is that the amounts required and the first PO that we now understand that it's what a contract would be for you, but for us, legally speaking, in Mexico, the contract is the contract and a PO is another different legal instrument. But now we understand that the PO is the contract for you. Realize that when companies need to sign the PO, they are reading amounts that are absolutely high, and that's impossible for those companies to do. So in the quality management, it's impossible to have the entire stock stored. When a company participates, that company needs to know that they will have to deliver, and of course we know that, but obviously the manufacturing process needs to be planned. We cannot have all the stock because of good storing practices, because of the expiry date, etc. So if UNOPS does not allow us to know how the planning will be beforehand, and when I say planning, I mean if the PO says 80% of the delivery, it's going to be very complicated for the industry because of the materials, of the raw materials, because of the pandemic, imports, exports. I mean, getting the materials is complicated, and that's what we are facing nowadays. Another very concerning topic And I know that you explained this a bit, but the logistics topic is concerning for us. We still don't know what are the requirements to work with the operator. We know this is not your responsibility, but please maybe you can help us so that we understand what this is and so that we can comply with the contract.
Bueno, ¿ya me escuchan? De nuevo, por parte de Canifarma, muchas gracias
From Canifarma, once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I would like to say that for the pharmaceutical industry, having enough planning time is very important. That way we will be able to participate in all processes. I understand what you're presenting, but honestly speaking, there is a difference between the theory and the practice. We think that UNOPS sometimes take a long time. And for the industry, it's very complicated to keep the prices, to keep the raw material and everything we need. And of course, we also need manufacturing time. So maybe you can try to be more efficient in terms of times so that we can keep the proposal submitted. I agree with what my colleague just said. We said this in the previous Q&A session. There are still many open items, many things to be solved. So hopefully we can fix everything. You can count on all stakeholders to do that. But yeah, we want to have more efficient processes. Processes take a long time. As I just said, the companies and the industry cannot keep those offers for that long. So it's very important that we have certain and immediate information and everything to happen faster. We understand that you're going to participate, that you will be involved, but the sooner we know the basis of the tender, the easiest and better for the industry. In July or August, we should be starting with a planning process. At least we should know the demand so that we can plan what we're going to do in terms of our times. That's very important. So maybe you can help us to have more efficient processes and you can help us so that we understand everything in a clear way. It's very important to have efficient processes. Thank you. I'm sorry, before we continue, I'd like to ask you for a favor. I understand that in a dialogue such as this one, we have comments related to open items and previous subjects. In order to solve all those subjects, we have a work table planned and we have other people who can give more specific information about that. We have technical people who are not here right now, so we can send them all your comments and all your questions, but here we'd like you to focus on the presentation. If there are open issues, we will solve them for sure. We are available for that. We're willing to do that. But here, we don't have technical specialists who can help us to answer all those comments and answers. So if you don't mind, let's focus on the presentation. At the end of this Q&A process, I'm going to talk about some measures and next steps for the next tenders. And I feel that that will somehow solve some of your concerns, some of your comments. I don't know if there are other questions. Hello, Oscar Flores from DIF. Talking about 2022, we'd like to ask you to help us to talk to INSABI so that we can know what are the keys that will be required, the estimated amounts as well, because as it has been said, the industry requires time for the planning process. So it's very important to know both keys and amounts. If that information is clear, then we will be able to do something that was said at the beginning of this session. Ensure that we have medicines and medical devices for the country. If you don't mind, let me answer. Thank you very much for your comment. What you said is very important. We are working together with Insabi. We're asking them to give us their requirements. We are aware that manufacturing requires time. We are aware that the pandemic, COVID, and logistics in general has made a more complicated process. I wanted to say that we do understand everything that you're saying, everything that you're facing, and we are committed to give you all the information as soon as we have it. As soon as we know from them, you will know from us. Next question. I have a very basic question. The answer is either yes or no. It has to do with Jose's presentation. What Jose? Jose Segovia. It's about the long-term agreements. You said 1 to 3 years, they can be renewed, right? So does that affect other tenders? Maybe by having those LTAs, other tenders won't be able to participate. Am I right? Hello, good morning. I'm Daniel from Medical Devices from Canifarma. Talking about what you were saying, Jose, you said that we should ask about the presentation, so I would like to highlight what other colleagues just said. And it has to do with a due planning. In your presentation, you said that the planning will come from the PO that will act as a contract. This contract, as you were saying, might then become a long-term agreement. But you also said that deliveries might be modified according to Insabi's needs. So let's say I have my planning. I agree on that planning. We both did. So according to that, I'm going to do my own planning. I'm going to look at all technical requirements for the manufacturing process or for the importing process. But anyway, I have everything ready, and then you can modify that according to Insabi's request. That's going to be a concern because we are planning our logistic process, but according to what you said, then it might change. So I'm a bit concerned because of that. Maybe instead of solving the issue is going to become worse. It can be more serious. And the most concerning thing is that maybe tomorrow the product that will be delivered to the patient won't be there. Thank you. I would like to say something about this question. One, let's separate agreement from contracts. The agreement, as I was saying, is an umbrella, not a contract. We sign a long-term agreement and we get a PO from that LTA. When issuing a PO under a long-term agreement, there must be an agreement between UNOPS and the supplier about the delivery time or the delivery schedule. But we said about the definite plan is that the definite plan is going to be adjusted when signing the PO, which is a contract for us. That is, we're going to set some dates. Nowadays, let's say that we have a delivery plan and you saw it during previous sessions, month 1, month 2, month 3. But when sitting down to sign, we need to set some specific dates, not just month 1, month 2, but October 31st of this year. So that's one thing. So the definite plan is that when we sit down and we structure everything and we sign it. Now, talking about changes, the changes that I talked about, UNOPS might request the supplier to deliver beforehand, after the request from Insabi. Let's go back to the spirit of the agreement. It's an agreement. That means UNOPS need to ask the supplier to do it and see if they can do it or not. UNOPS will go to the supplier and will say, next month you need to deliver 300 units and then 500 units. But Insabi needs more units, maybe 600. Can you do it? And the supplier will say either yes or no. If the supplier can do it, they will. But we cannot go and change the delivery date because that delivery date is set on the contract. It was set from the beginning. So it's important that you know that we will not change the contract. We will request, we will ask the company to do it. But let's say that Insabi has a demand peak. So how can we address that peak? We can go to the supplier. We can ask if they can give us the product. Maybe we can see if there are other ways to get the same key, or we can think of different options. But don't worry, we will not modify the delivery date. Thank you very much. I'm from Canacintra. First of all, Jose Segovia, your presentation was very interesting. And I think it was very good. I hope that we see in practice everything you said. Echoing my colleague's comments, you said that delivery places can change as long as they are in Mexico City or the metropolitan area. I think that that doesn't pose any problem. But what we have seen is that places change, but logistics operators are not informed. So sometimes we go, we want to deliver, and they don't want to accept the product because they don't know about this change. So my request is, if there are changes, please let everyone know. I'm saying this because I've experienced it. And then you said month 1, month 2, month 3. Right now, in the 2020-2021 tender, that's what we saw from month 1 to month 12. But now, in medical devices, we have specific delivery dates. We are in the second semester of the year. I don't know if everything will be done according to the number of the month, or if there's going to be an overlap. So if this is month 1, month 2 is July from next year. So I don't know if it's going to be from August next year, or if deliveries will overlap to what we have today.
Yeah, actually, we are completing the planning, and we will talk to Insabi as well. First of all, the time frames match, and secondly, not the supply capacity of a company, because We are very much aware that maybe processes that take longer than it should, they shouldn't end up being a mechanism of for the companies that have self-supply of saturation of these companies that may supply, and just because there was an overlap of the time frames, we are working on that logic. So we have a series of questions from the people that are sending questions online. So I would like to give them the floor as well, and I would like to hear those questions as well. May read out loud the questions. Whoever is watching and listening to the live stream, you can see it in slido.com. You can enter the code with the, it says hashtag compras 2022. We have some questions about e-sourcing platform and how the clarification process is. So the question is, let me read it aloud. How is it possible to make questions about clarifications published in e-sourcing?
Gracias, Federico. Bueno, para los que participaron en los procesos
Thank you,
anteriores,
Federico. For those that participated in the previous processes, you realized that there was as an informative session and we left open the terms for questions. So
a una serie de situaciones, especialmente el alto volumen
this led to a series of situations, especially the high volume of questions that we receive and the high volume of responses we get. So in these new tender events,
se está planificando
we are planning to carry out a different way to socialize.
mucho
With the pre-basis,
la industria y el mercado
this will be very helpful for the industry to have clarification. And also during the tender process, we are foreseeing to have more than one informative session to provide in detail information about the final document, explaining it in detail. And that will allow us to explain the vendors and the tenders and to have their questions clarified and cleared
las prebases pueden
according to the comments made to the pre-basis. So we are trying to look for mechanisms
oportunidad
to provide more participation opportunities to the market by clarifying the basis and also reducing the level and the volume, the number of questions that we receive that can be very repetitive. For example, we have questions about payments,
cuánto tiempo van a tener
like how long,
y la respuesta era
when are you gonna pay? In how long it takes to get paid? 45 days.
hacían exactamente
And there were like 25 tenders doing that same question. So
reiterar aquí lo que en algún
it is important to repeat what Federico said,
la pregunta se recibe
that the question is received from a tender
trata de
and it is about
revelar quién la hizo nosotros nunca
not making it anonymous, this question, because we will never share the or disclose the name of the person who made the question, and the question and the answer is given in general. So everybody receives an answer. So we know that some
este mecanismo
business chambers or that they did not know the mechanisms well, they grouped together their members and they ask each of them to make a question. But under this mechanism, we do want to clarify this. We receive the questions one on one and we respond everybody to provide the same information to everybody. The same information to everybody and to all the parties. And that is how we address the clarifications. We have many other questions in fact. We're going to try to group them together. There is a question about the presentation um, of this year. When can we find that information?
en la página web del
On the website of the project, you may find the information of the awards.
semana pasada o antepasada
I think last week or
comentaron acá
I think last week or 2 weeks ago,
información
They uploaded the awards, the award the parties, and information that is official is in the website of the project. Okay. Do we need to update the UNGM registry with this new tender? Only if it's necessary, you need to update it if any condition change, if your email change. Here I would like to add up to what Federico said about UNGM. Remember, it's the entry uh, door to the e-sourcing, but in e-sourcing, you can register several emails. And that is very, very important because we have those emails we have different emails to do communications with users. And sometimes what happens is that you have the manager, the general manager's email. But when you have a, a request for clarification, that person is not 24/7 looking there at the email 24/7. Sometimes these emails get lost in the inbox. So please do provide two emails of people that are strictly involved in this tender process so that whenever you receive the answer to the question, you may accelerate the answer. Because remember that clarifications have a certain time frame. They have a deadline to be responded. They have 24 to 48 hours to be responded. So if there is a term and if the tender does not respond, they may lose their chance. So even though they respond, they sometimes they are not complying with the deadline. So please do try to be very quick in your answers when they are being asked to you. There is a clarification for request. A clarification request. Where can we find this? The procurement manual in Spanish. It was version 7 of the procurement manual was published. It is in the process of being translated, like with an official translation that will be posted in how we in the UNOPS website. Can we explain better the difference between the contract and order concepts? Yeah, the difference between a contract, a purchase order, and yeah, this is what is actually creating some confusion. I can talk about the purchase order and an order, pedido. There are several concepts that we should not confuse. The long-term agreement, the umbrella agreement, the frame agreement, even though it might be long-term, it has no amounts. That's important. So there is no obligation from the parties, from the vendor or the buyer, or the vendor or with the contractor to supply. So the long-term agreement, what it facilitates is the process of issuing a later contract. It's a frame agreement, and then it's like an open contract, or like an open contract. So the purchase order is a contract for us. So depending or according to the Mexican habits, I mean, this is the same document. Contract for us is the purchase order. So at long term or the long term agreement, they issue the purchase order, which is basically the commitment to have available funds, and it's the order itself and the commitment to deliver the goods that were established in the established terms and timeframes. And also we have the reprogramming, rescheduling, descheduling. The purchase order does not have in detail the timeline, but the purchase order or the this other order is a document that is submitted to the warehouse of whoever needs to deliver the goods. Okay, more than questions, and starting to wrap up, I would like to share with you that some of us that have had or some of you that have had the experience to participate in the bids, you will know that for the procurement of 2022, you will see certain conditions change exactly to promote participation and to implement more flexibility, especially when we are receiving comments. I'm telling you, like, wait until the end of the presentation because we're going to talk about certain modifications that may address some of your concerns. This is related to what we said at the beginning about the dynamic reasoning of between vendors and buyers. Let's start with the first point, the pre-qualification of the tenders. Those companies that have already participated in previous processes and that have already been identified as pre-qualified, in the future processes they will have to submit less documents in the near future because the documents they have already submitted, the corporate information that are already pre-qualified, you don't need to send those documents again, submit that information again. So the workload from the documentation standpoint is easier because they have been pre-qualified. One of the other important advantages is that those that are pre-qualified may not really need the offer sustainment and the offer support guarantee because we know how expensive it is to get the offer guarantees, and it will be replaced by a statement of guarantee. What does that mean? It is an it's explicit agreement that we will maintain the terms and conditions of the offer that you're sending with the expiry date. And what happens if we do not you don't comply with the offer support? Then that means that you might not be eligible in the future. That means that you will not be able to participate in bids in the future in the UN. But serious companies do not have to cover the cost to go to the banks, etc., and to have all the associated costs. That's why at the beginning I was talking about that link this in the cycle between buyers and vendors. Then another important point is, especially for the representatives of foreign companies, especially some that might be interested in participating in the process but that do not speak Spanish, then we will be submitting a translated version in English of the documentation of the list of requirements. So you can, I mean, of course we will, if there is any mismatch, we will always use the Spanish version uh, as a rule, but we will but 80% of the preparation of the offer is done in the e-sourcing system. That is why it's going to be very positive for them to know exactly what requirements, what tables they are completing when they have the information in English as well. So this is one of the mechanisms that we will implement and we will facilitate for the participation of foreign companies. Another aspect is the qualification requisites. We actually discussed this during the coffee break with some of you. We will make it easier to include consortium or joint ventures, especially because of the amount of supply that we are foreseeing for 2022 to 2024. First, we used to have one of the partners of the joint ventures would have to comply with 100% of the requirements, but now the joint venture will have to have a document of the joint venture. They will have to name a representative of the joint venture, and they will have to comply with at least 50% of the requirements, and the other partners will comply with at least 25% of the requirements. So we believe this is a huge incentive for smaller companies that might form a joint venture with another major company, and that way we can extend our vendor basis. Another topic um, regarding what someone else said, what another colleague said, the flexibility of the deliverables. For those that know about tenders, the The timeline is a condition for the compliance of the contract. What does that mean? That we will be submitting a timeline that you must commit to. But in alternative mechanisms or in or alternative timelines or schedules may be um, published as well, and there will be more flexibility with the deliverables because we perhaps if you're not going to be able to if you're going to miss the deadline that could lead you to be disqualified, so we're going to be a little bit more flexible on that, especially regarding the comment I got from the medical devices representative. We will introduce that type of flexibility, and also regarding the medicines and the manufacturing times. I understand that the first months perhaps we can have the stop. You can start supplying your like having the stock together so you can so you don't miss the deadline. So we're gonna provide more flexibility on the timelines. Then we have like the long-term agreements, the LTA that Jose mentioned. So far, the processes have taken place through contracts that used to be very, very stiff regarding amounts, but because of certain situations, there were certain changes in some cases. So, in parallel with these contracts, as we said, so far we are going to establish for certain cases, for certain sectors or areas, we will have these long-term agreements. I think this brings major advantages for the buyer and the vendor because for us it means that once that the offers have gone through all the assessment filters, and if they come from a serious tender party, and if they are complying with the requirements and prices are reasonable, when establishing a long-term agreement, we can have the possibility for 1 to 3 years to actually go directly to the supply of that company, use the supply of that company without having to go through another selection of tender, through another tender process, because it will be a permanent link throughout 3 years. But it doesn't mean that eventually um, it will not be, the contract will not finish. But if the vendor has availability to deliver, we can agree directly with them if they have already been awarded. So, strategically speaking, beyond 2022, that gives us an overview, a business overview of 3 years, which is the time frame in which UNOPS is going to be supporting Mexico, and this will bring advantages to Mexico and to us as buyers because we're going to have simplified mechanisms with already well-established vendors at reasonable prices. And finally, one of the other flexibility points that we have introduced in this process is now going back to the tables of the disqualification and the reasoning for disqualification. In some cases, what happened is that none of the vendors was able to supply 100% a specific batch. So what we're going to be doing is that in the case where there is no vendor that technically qualifies for the whole batch, for the 100% of the batch, we will consider partial offers. So we will start considering as a plan B, if there is no 100% plan, we are going to consider partial awarding to provide, to secure supply. So that is what you can expect. We are still working on that. As we said before, once we have all the tests completed, we will share them, we will receive feedback. And what we wanted you to know, well, and wrapping up, if there are no further comments, we wanted to have this, wanted to approach you, we wanted you to know us better, to provide testimony of our availability and willingness to work with the industry to have long-term agreement and cooperation, and to be, and we are here for you. We are available to hear you, to listen to you, to listen to your feedback, so we can have a long-term relationship here. Do we have any comments? I think that will be all from us.
¿Cómo no? Bueno, nos tienen un poquito de paciencia, tomamos algunas de las preguntas virtuales y después tomamos.
Okay, please be patient because we will take some of the questions from the online channels first. Okay, following up to the joint ventures. So even though they are in a pharmaceutical joint venture, can they participate by themselves, like as a single entity without any conflict of interest? Yes, we would just need one offer per company, but you cannot have simultaneous tenders, proposals as a single partner or as a joint venture. For us, joint ventures, we take them process by process. Sometimes there are certain joint ventures for a certain offer, but if there is a consolidated offer and then they submit as a single party their offer, then they will be both disqualified. This is about qualification. Once they have been pre-qualified, and if the financial capacity changes, is that a reason? Is this something that we consider during assessment? For the pre-qualification, this situation is foreseen. The financial statements change throughout time, so we will let them. We will let the participants to provide these statements to do a financial capacity and to assess the contracts. Okay, now for the following year, the patent medicines, will they follow the same strategy? Well, we have two categories. The medicines with patents, we're going to follow the same strategy, which is directly negotiating with the owners of the patents and following the bids that we have scheduled already. We have a very general question. What are the eligibility criteria for awarding a contract? What are the filters or criteria that you mentioned to award a contract? Well, within certain criteria, I mean, we're not going to mention them all. For a tender, sometimes we can change requirements for different tenders. But, for example, if they are not in the list of eligible vendors by the United Nations, by the Mexican government, and they cannot take part of this, then the other would be having conflict of interest. Then we have formal criteria and that the documentation is complete. So in this stage of the tender, we do want to see a complete offer. In this occasion, in this new process, we're trying to make things easier. We want to make it easier for the uploading of documents, of forms, and trying to reduce the risk of a tender not submitting any statement, any certain form or application form, just to prevent them from being disqualified. Next question. Do we have information about the date of the new process? Okay, we are foreseeing and take this as a preliminary date. We think we're going to set the basis for procurement of 2022. We're going to launch a supply for 2022. The basis would be ready perhaps the first 2 weeks of the following month. Those are the terms, the timeframes we are considering. We have to take this as a preliminary date. Okay, we need to start providing some references to the industry. Where can we find the materials and the presentation that was given today? I think in the same channel you're watching it. Actually, the presentation has been published in YouTube, so you can have access to the information anytime.
Bueno, esta es una pregunta. Dice, los licitantes que no tienen
This is a question. The
presentar un producto, ¿cómo es el proceso?
participants that don't have an LTA but have the product, what is the process to submit their proposal, their offer? It's exactly the same. The way you offer, that you submit an offer is the same. Whether you only want a purchase order or you want to submit to an LTA and a purchase order will be exactly the same process, same requirements,
Básicamente es
no differences. So basically, it is
cuando llamemos
you just have to participate in the tender process complying with the minimum requirements.
sobre temas logísticos.
I see
que eso
a lot of comments about logistics.
manejan ellos.
Bueno, me gustaría tomar una o dos preguntas más del piso.
We can take one or two questions more from the floor.
Pregunta.
Comments or questions?
Sí, gracias nuevamente, Enrique Martínez del Instituto Farmacéutico INFAM. Un poco de la presentación de los resultados de la 2021, de los procesos de
Pharmaceutical industry, the results of 2021.
ahí se observa una relación de claves en donde se señala que no se adjudican estas por un tema de inhabilitación o de sanción, esperando que sean las empresas en
Waiting for the companies.
en el portal
So I was looking at the portal
y no veo una actualización donde
and I don't see an update.
efectivamente, dónde podría uno ubicar a estas empresas, ¿no? Particularmente cuando uno entra a México no veo ninguna
Especially when we are in Mexico, I don't see a list of 2021 or 2022
tanto por el hecho mismo de la transparencia del
because of the transfer of information itself.
es en cuanto a precisamente el hecho de no adjudicarse a reserva
We're
de
talking about
que hacen en ese rubro,
not awarding,
conjunto de criterios que se siguieron y
the set of
conocer
criteria
va a ser público
that was
para saber qué
followed.
criterios se siguieron para que
Well, the thing is that knowing
productos
what criteria was followed
adjudicados
is very
proveedor en
important.
consecuencia, ¿no? Gracias.
Thank you.
Déjeme responder a esa pregunta.
Let me answer that question.
Ofertas que se declaran
The
elegibles, nosotros
offers
en los resultados de licitaciones damos a conocer cuáles, o sea,
are evaluated,
cuántas
and then
ofertas
as part of the
se
results, we
han
say
habido un comunicado
how many
público
offers, as we have done until now, as we did last Friday.
se han hecho públicos.
Well, we publish
Lo que
different
no
tables
hacemos
informing the
es decir,
results.
tal
What we
empresa ha
don't
quedado
do is
en
saying
esta
this
licitación
company
inelegible por tal y cual motivo, porque creemos que es innecesario. Sí tenemos
was
listas
dismissed
de
because of
cuáles
this
son las
or
empresas
that
que
other
elegibles.
reason.
Lo que no hacemos es decir, es inelegible en tal proceso.
We just don't say in this specific tender,
en tal proceso. O sea,
this
es algo que
company
también quiero aclarar.
was not
Y la segunda parte de la pregunta,
eligible.
¿me puedes recordar?
And could you remind me the second part of the question?
El listado sí, de empresas inelegibles, sí. Sí, 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 sí.
The list of those non-eligible companies?
Sí, es un listado
Yes.
que compartimos
Yeah,
Naciones
yeah.
Unidas y
It's a
ONU.
list
Sí.
that we share between the UN and the World Bank.
No, no es razón por precio, pero básicamente se dice por prácticas fraudulentas.
We
o por-
don't say
en
because of
general se
price,
pone
for
el
example,
por
we
el cual la
say
empresa
because
se
of
descalificada y también se
corruptive
pone el
practices
periodo por el cual ha sido sancionada. Ahí
in that list, and we also have the period
de
of time
inelegibilidades
for
temporarias.
which the company was sanctioned, because some are sanctioned forever and some just for some time.
Están en las categorías que están en la tabla que presentamos.
We
No
have
vamos
the
más allá.
categories from the table we presented. We are not going to do anything in addition to that. Is there another
Última
question?
pregunta, entonces.
Oh, last question.
Sí, muchas
Then.
gracias. Ahora sí me voy a enfocar a lo que comentaban. Digo, primero, gracias por la fecha de septiembre de 2022. que
Well,
eso va a
first,
ayudar
thank you
mucho.
very much for
Tengo algunas
the
preguntas sobre
September date.
Septiembre 2021.
pero sí,
September
para 2022,
2021.
para 2022.
Yeah, yeah, I mean for 2022,
Hay
September
algunas preguntas
21.
que me llamaron la atención, bueno,
Well,
con
there are
base en lo que se comentó. Para empezar, de
different
las fianzas, lo que
questions I
mencionaban
have
sobre
based
los
on what
proveedores
was
que se
said.
ven precalificados para
First,
obtenerlas, creo que eso
those
valió la pena
suppliers that were going to be
un poco de información para
pre-qualified.
tener
Can you
muy
give
claro
us
eso,
a bit
sobre
more
todo que los
information of that
actuales proveedores que fueron
so that we know
calificados pudieran ya pues, aspirar a tener esa precalificación para el
if
tema
the
de las fianzas,
awarded
que es bastante
suppliers
complicado.
can have those
Uno de los temas también que está
pre-qualifications?
relacionado con las fianzas es la
Then
proporcionalidad de las mismas, ¿no? O sea, en dado caso
the
de que haya
proportion
incumplimiento en ciertos
of the bonds or bills that we were talking about. How are they going to be charged? Is it going to be all the amount or just a percentage? Another question, medicines from one single source, which are different from patent and others. I don't know if the same strategy is going to be followed. I think the strategy should be the same in order to avoid delays. And Canacintra was saying that these contracts are until July 2022. So how will the homologation process will be? We don't know if amounts will be repeated. We have seen that some institutions such as IMSS ask for a reposition order with the same amount that you ask for, so it seems that the amount is required twice when it's not. So maybe we can have more standardization in terms of deliveries. And then if we have the day, month, year for the delivery, that would be great. It would be very helpful for our planning. And I think those were all my questions. And my only suggestion is maybe in 2022 we can have more effective and efficient communication channels for the industry to have updated information all the time. Thank you very much. Let me see how much can I answer from all those questions. I can tell you, as I said at the beginning, that the work tables will be talking about the process for the next years. Now you asked about the single source medicines. That's related to my presentation, so I can answer. These are medicines that, as you said, are medicines that have one single record in Mexico. That does not mean that we can have one single supplier. We are working together with INVI and others because we want to incorporate those medicines in the tender process, because we can have suppliers out of the only supplier in Mexico. So those medicines are also going to be included in the tender process. Laura? Thank you very much. Can you hear me? It's easier without the mask, right? Yes. I want to thank everyone who participated. I want to thank all of those who are watching us online. This session is going to be available for you to watch it. I want to thank Jose, Federico, and the entire communications team, everyone who did this possible. The objective is reaching as many people as possible, because we have one key and main objective, which is reaching those who need us the most. As this is our main objective, we need to continue working together as we're doing it right now. We need to continue planning, and we need to continue solving those open issues that need to be solved. We're going to continue with our technical tables. As we already mentioned before, we have a very specific objective for this session. We wanted to talk about the procurement process. We wanted to talk about tenders, but other topics require other approaches, other specialists, etc. And we want to give our audience exactly what everyone needs. So thank you very much. I hope you and your families stay safe. We will keep informing you about the next technical sessions that we have. We will also tell you about our next informative sessions. We will continue working with Insabi and with you. And I'm sure that many more will join us very soon in order to reach our main objective. Thank you very much.